The grand chamber of the High Synod did not echo. It absorbed sound, swallowing the whispers of 1,000 species into the velvet darkness of its vast, domed ceiling. Here, in the gravitational neutral zone of the station known as the Spire, the air was always cool, scented with the sterile ozone of energy shields and the faint, biological musk of fear. High Counselor Valor, a being of slender limbs and translucent, iridescent skin that shimmered with his shifting moods, stood at the apex of the central dais. His 4 eyes, usually calm and reflective like the pools of his homeworld, were now narrowed, trembling with a physiological reaction his species had supposedly evolved beyond eons ago. Before him, floating in the center of the amphitheater, was the obsidian slate, a monolithic interface of black data glass that held the codified laws of the Galactic Union. It was currently displaying a single glowing glyph in a harsh crimson hue, a symbol that had not been invoked since the Age of Ash. It was the glyph for the Sol system. It was the glyph for quarantine. The silence in the chamber was not the silence of peace. It was the suffocating pressure of a storm held back by a single fraying thread. The representatives of the Galactic Union, seated in their tiered pods that spiraled upward into the gloom, were motionless, their diverse physiologies united in a singular moment of apprehension. They were waiting for Valor to speak, to utter the words that would undo 5,000 cycles of isolation, to unlock the cage of the galaxy's most dangerous variable. Valor placed a long, 6-fingered hand upon the podium, feeling the hum of the station's reactor deep beneath his feet, a vibration that felt like the heartbeat of a dying beast. "The pale scourge has breached the Antares sector," Valor said, his voice amplified by the Neuralink lattice that connected every mind in the room. He did not shout. The gravity of the statement required no volume. "The 7th Fleet is gone. The planetary shields of Kalar Prime have failed. The consumption is absolute. We are not fighting a war. We are being erased." A ripple of psychic distress moved through the assembly, a wave of telepathic anxiety that tasted like copper in the back of the throat. The Crixus representative, a hulking creature of chitin and magma-veined armor, shifted in his pod, the sound of his grinding plates loud in the stillness. The Crixus were warriors, bred for the heat of stellar combat, yet even he looked diminished, his mandibles twitching with a frustration that bordered on panic. The Galactic Union had ruled for 10 millennia through order, through bureaucracy, through the careful management of civilizations. They had categorized every species, measured every star, and calculated the trajectory of every comet. But the pale scourge defied categorization. It was not a biological entity, nor a technological one. It was a phenomenon, a creeping white silence that simply deleted matter, leaving behind nothing but cold void. It defied physics. It defied negotiation. And now it was accelerating. Valor closed his upper set of eyes, the memory of the burning reports searing his mind. "We have exhausted our options," he continued, the admission tasting like bile. "Our weapons are ineffective. Our shields are paper. The Science Directorate has failed to identify the source or the nature of the enemy. We face extinction within 3 cycles." He paused, letting the finality of the timeline settle upon them like a shroud. "Therefore, the High Council has authorized the activation of Protocol Omega. We will dissolve the containment field surrounding Sector 0. A collective gasp, physical and psychic, tore through the chamber. It was a sound of disbelief, of horror. Sector 0, the grave of the reckless, the prison of the mad, Earth. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. A dozen localized containment fields flared as representatives shouted, hissed, and signaled their dissent. The representative of the Sylph, a species of floating, gaseous energy contained within intricate glass suits, drifted forward, her voice resonating directly in Valor's mind, sharp and crystalline. "Madness, Counselor. You invite a predator to save you from a plague. The humans were sealed for a reason. Their aggression was unchecked. Their technological hunger consumed their own biosphere. They are chaos incarnate. If you release them, who will save us from them?" Valor looked at the Sylph, his expression weary. "We have no one else, Ambassador Lyra. The humans were violent, yes. They were chaotic, but they were also the only species in recorded history to survive a Class 4 stellar collapse through sheer stubbornness. They weaponized the atom before they had unified their planetary government. They are the only species that understands war not as a ritual, but as a total state of existence." The Crixus warlord roared, a guttural sound that rattled the viewports. "They are. Savages, they burn, they destroy. 5,000 years ago, they threatened to destabilize the hyperlanes with their experimental drives. We locked them away to protect the structure of reality, not just ourselves. If the scourge is death, the humans are damnation." Valor slammed his hand down, a pulse of psionic command silencing the room. "And what choice do we have?" he demanded, his voice finally rising, cracking with the strain. "Do you wish to die with your honor intact, warlord? Do you wish to dissolve into the white nothingness, clutching your history books? The humans are dangerous. Yes, that is why we need them. We do not need a diplomat. We do not need a scholar. We need a monster." He gestured to the obsidian slate. "The containment field has degraded. The buoys are failing. Even if we do not lower the barrier, it will fall within a century. But we do not have a century. We have days. The vote has been cast by the inner circle. This is not a debate. This is a notification." He turned his back on the assembly, facing the massive holographic projection of the galaxy that floated above the dais. A small, quarantined sphere on the outer rim pulsed with a menacing red light. "Computer," Valor said, his voice trembling slightly. "Execute Command Sequence Alpha 9. Deactivate the Cronus barrier. Release Earth." The hologram shifted. The red sphere turned amber, then blinked into a terrified silence. The massive hyperspatial inhibitors, stations the size of moons that had orbited the Sol system for 5 millennia, began their deactivation cycle. Across the galaxy, sensors flared. The gravitational weight of the barrier, a distortion that had bent starlight for light years, vanished. The tension in the grand chamber was palpable, a physical pressure that made it hard to breathe. They waited. They watched the sensors. They expected a fleet of jagged, primitive warships to burst forth, spewing radiation and kinetic slugs. They expected a roar of radio chatter, threats, demands. They expected the barbarians to come crashing through the gates, but there was nothing. The sensors sweeping the Sol system showed nothing. No sudden spike in energy, no fleet launch, no transmission, just the quiet hum of a yellow star and its orbiting bodies. Minutes stretched into an hour. The representatives began to murmur. Had they died? Had the humans destroyed themselves in their isolation? Had the quarantine eventually suffocated them, leaving nothing but a graveyard world? Valor frowned, tapping the console. "Sensor resolution maximum," he ordered. "Where are they?" "Reading anomalies," the artificial intelligence of the Spire responded, its voice flat and unconcerned. "Gravitational lensing around the third planet is incorrect. Spatial coordinates are shifting." Valor leaned forward. "Explain. The planet Earth is not where it should be," the computer stated. "Correction, the planet Earth is everywhere." Before Valor could process the absurdity of the statement, the grand chamber lurched. It was not a physical impact, but a displacement of reality itself, a sudden vertigo that sent the Sylph representative spinning in her glass suit. The light in the chamber shifted, the cool blue of the nebular projection replaced by a stark, absolute white, then fading into a deep, endless indigo. In the center of the chamber, directly above the obsidian slate, space did not tear, it folded. It was as if someone had taken the fabric of the universe and pinched it. A shape emerged, but it was not a ship. It was a geometric impossibility, a perfect sphere of matte gray material, no larger than a transport shuttle, yet it radiated a mass reading that rivaled a neutron star. It hovered silently, defying all known laws of propulsion. There were no engines, no exhaust, no windows. It was simply there, an object of absolute defiance. The Crixus warlord raised his weapon, a plasma cannon built into his arm. "Hostile entity, fire! Belay that order!" Valor screamed, but the warlord was already firing. A bolt of superheated plasma capable of melting the hull of a dreadnought streaked across the chamber toward the sphere. The assembly flinched. The bolt struck the sphere and vanished. There was no explosion, no dissipation. The energy simply ceased to exist the moment it touched the gray surface. The sphere did not move. It did not glow. It merely absorbed the attack as if it were a raindrop falling into an ocean. Then a voice spoke. It did not come from the sphere. It came from the air, from the walls, from the minds of everyone present. It was not loud, but it possessed a clarity that was terrifying. It spoke in standard Galactic, the grammar perfect, the tone devoid of the aggression they had feared. It sounded disappointed. "Kinetic energy transfer attempted. Inefficient. Aggression quotient detected. High. Intelligence quotient detected. Low. Is this the greeting of the High Synod?" The sphere began to rotate slowly, and as it did, the surface shifted, liquid metal flowing to form a platform. A figure materialized upon it. It was a biped. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head topped with short, pale hair. A human, but this was not the savage clad in scrap metal and Kevlar depicted in the archives. The figure wore a suit of woven material that seemed to absorb the ambient light, shifting in color from midnight blue to charcoal. The human's face was smooth, unlined, but the eyes were old. They held a depth that made Valor's soul shiver. They were eyes that had seen the end of time and found it boring. The human stepped off the platform, walking on the empty air as if there were an invisible floor beneath him, descending slowly to the dais where Valor stood paralyzed. The human stopped 2 meters away, towering over the slender counselor. The human did not bow. He did not offer a hand. He merely observed, his gaze dissecting Valor with surgical precision. "I am Ambassador Solon," the human said, his voice resonating in the silence. "On behalf of the Terran Ascendancy, I accept your surrender of the quarantine protocols. You are late." Valor stammered, his translator struggling to convey the nuances of his shock. "Late, we released you. We chose to lower the barrier." Solon tilted his head slightly, a gesture that conveyed mild amusement. "You lowered the physical emitters, yes, but the Cronus barrier ceased to be an obstacle for us 3,000 years ago. We kept it active from our side." The chamber erupted in whispers. The Crixus warlord roared, "Lies, the barrier is impenetrable." "It is the pinnacle of Forerunner technology." Solon turned his gaze to the warlord, and for a moment the air around the human seemed to darken. "Forerunner technology," Solon repeated, tasting the words. "Rudimentary manipulation of strong nuclear forces, a child's fence. We maintained it because we wished to be left alone. We had work to do. We were busy solving the problems you were too afraid to ask." He turned back to Valor. "But now you have turned it off. You have rung the dinner bell. You are desperate. You are afraid of the white silence." Valor froze. The name of the enemy had not been broadcast outside the high-security channels. "How do you know of the scourge?" Solon tapped the side of his head. "We listen. We have been listening to your transmissions, your panic, your encrypted screams for centuries. We have watched your empire stagnate while you played politics in this gilded cage. We watched the scourge eat the Antares sector. We calculated the rate of decay. We estimated you would call for us approximately now." He looked around the chamber, his expression hardening. "You underestimated us, counselors. You locked us in the dark thinking we would eat each other. You forgot what humans do in the dark." He took a step closer to the obsidian slate. "We invent light." The arrogance was breathtaking, but it was not the hot, blustering arrogance of the Crixus. It was the cold, hard arrogance of a mountain. The sylph representative drifted down, her lights pulsing with curiosity. "If you could have left, why stay? Why allow us to believe we were your jailers?" Solon looked at the ethereal being. "Because isolation is the crucible of evolution. Without your interference, without your trade guilds and your cultural dilution, we were free to pursue paths of science you deemed heretical. We optimized our genome. We cracked the code of zero-point energy. We mapped the subquantum realm. We didn't want to conquer your galaxy. We wanted to transcend it." "And now?" Valor asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Will you conquer us now?" Solon laughed, a short, dry sound. "Conquer you, counselor, look at your fleets. They burn chemical fuel and fissile matter. Your shields are frequency-based. Your government is paralyzed by procedural deadlock. Conquering you would be like conquering an anthill. It offers no strategic value and significantly increases our administrative overhead. No, we are not here to conquer." Human's face grew serious, the weight of a terrible purpose settling over him. "We are here because the scourge is not just your enemy. It is a glutton, and if it finishes with you, it will come for the cradle we have built. We are here to clean up your mess." Suddenly, the station's red alert klaxons began to wail, a dissonant screech that tore through the conversation. The holographic map flared red. "Proximity alert!" the computer shrieked, losing its flat affect. "Hyperspace rupture in sector. Distance close. It is the scourge. They have tracked the barrier deactivation signal." Panic, raw and unfiltered, exploded in the chamber. Representatives scrambled for their transport pods. The Crixus warlord began shouting orders to a fleet that was light years away. The sylph flickered in terror. On the main screen, the view of the stars was blotted out. A tear in reality appeared, jagged and bleeding white light. From it, "You're the scourge, not ships, but massive, writhing shapes of white silence, geometric fractals that dissolved the station's outer sensor buoys upon contact. They didn't fire weapons. They simply collided with matter, and the matter ceased to be. It was an avalanche of non-existence." "Shields up, maximum output," Valor screamed. "Evacuate the council." "Belay that," Solon said calmly, his voice cut through the panic like a blade. "Sit down, counselor, watch." "Are you insane?" Valor cried, grabbing the podium. "The station cannot withstand a direct assault. That is a Class 10 incursion." "It is a biological waste disposal problem," Solon corrected. He tapped a communication device on his wrist. "Terra Eterna, this is Solon. The pests are here. Sanitize the local volume." From the tier in space where the small sphere had arrived, something else began to emerge. It was massive. It pushed through the fabric of spacetime with a groan that vibrated in the teeth of every being in the station. It was a ship, but it defied the aesthetic of the Galactic Union. It was not sleek or crystalline. It was a brutalist monolith of matte black metal, a jagged spearhead that eclipsed the local star. It was the size of a small moon, its surface bristling with towers and canyons of technology that hurt the eyes to look at. There were no engine glows, only a shimmering distortion around its hull, an event horizon, the Terra Eterna. The scourge swarmed toward it, drawn by the immense mass. The council watched, breathless, expecting the human ship to be consumed. The white fractals impacted the black hull, and then the universe seemed to hold its breath. The Terra Eterna did not fire lasers. It did not launch missiles. Instead, the space around the human ship began to twist. Gravity waves, visible to the naked eye as ripples in the starfield, emanated from the ship. The scourge fractals, caught in the waves, stopped. Then they began to unravel. It was not an explosion. It was unmaking. The human ship was manipulating the local physics constants. It was increasing the rate of entropy within the scourge fleet. The white shapes turned gray, then black, then crumbled into dust, and finally into subatomic particles. In seconds, the invading swarm, a force that had consumed entire star systems, was reduced to a cloud of harmless hydrogen gas. The Terra Eterna pulsed once, a deep, resonant thrum that felt like a bell tolling the end of an era, and then went silent. In the grand chamber, there was no sound. No one moved. The power they had just witnessed was not warfare, it was godhood. It was the power to edit reality. Vaylor looked at Solon with wide, terrified eyes. The human stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the drifting cloud of gas with a critical eye. "Efficiency at 94%, Solon muttered. "We'll need to calibrate the entropy field for this sector's background radiation." He turned to Vaylor, who had collapsed into his chair. "As I said, Counselor, we have been busy." The transition from the chaos of the attack to the silence of the aftermath was jarring. The council representatives, those who hadn't fled, slowly returned to their pods, their arrogance stripped away, replaced by a primal awe. The Crixus warlord was silent, his plasma cannon powered down, his mandibles slack. The sylph stared at the human, her light dim and reverent. Vaylor struggled to find his voice. The dynamics of the galaxy had shifted in 5 minutes. The hierarchy was broken. "What? What do you want?" Vaylor asked, his voice trembling. "You have saved us. You have the power to rule us. Do you demand the high seat? Do you demand tribute?" Solon looked around the chamber, seeing the fear, the expectation of subjugation that was so ingrained in their history. He sighed, a very human sound of exhaustion. "We do not want your high seat, Vaylor. We do not want your tribute. We have matter fabricators that can print starships. We have energy siphons that draw from the vacuum." "What could you possibly offer us?" "Then why?" the sylph asked. "Why intervene?" "Because," Solon said, pacing the dais, "humanity learned a hard lesson during the quarantine. We learned that surviving isn't enough. We learned that the universe is a dark forest filled with things far older and hungrier than the scourge." He stopped and looked directly at the camera drones, broadcasting his face to the entire galaxy. "The scourge is fleeing. Did you notice? They aren't invading. They are running." A chill went through the assembly. Running from what? "We released the quarantine not because we wanted to rejoin you," Solon continued, "but because we needed the space to maneuver. The scourge is the shockwave. The explosion is coming behind them." He gestured to the obsidian slate, and the image changed. It showed a map of the galaxy, but zoomed out, showing the intergalactic void. There, in the deep dark, was a shadow that was blocking out the light of distant galaxies. It was vast, spanning millions of light years. "We call them the harvesters," Solon said softly. "They harvest entropy. They extinguish stars to harvest the dying energy. They are coming here. The scourge was just displacing matter to get out of their way." The horror in the room was absolute. The scourge had been an existential threat. This was the end of all things. "We cannot fight that," the Crixus warlord whispered, the first time he had ever admitted defeat. "It is impossible." "For you, yes," Solon said. "For the council, bound by archaic laws and stagnant science, it is death. But for us?" A faint smile touched his lips. "We have spent 5,000 years preparing for the impossible. We have built weapons that utilize the very fabric of the void. We have turned our entire solar system into a fortress. But we cannot fight them alone. We need logistics, we need supply lines, we need eyes in every sector." He looked at Vaylor. "We are not here to rule you, we are here to draft you. The quarantine is over. The war for existence has begun. You have underestimated us for the last time. Now you will listen." Act 2 began not with fanfare, but with the brutal efficiency of human logistics. The Terra Eterna became the anchor point for a new network. The Galactic Council, once the supreme authority, became a logistical arm for the Terran ascendancy. There was resistance, of course. Ancient pride does not die easily. The reptilian Vilos hegemony refused to grant human ships access to their hyperlanes, citing sovereign territory. The response was immediate and nonviolent. A single human frigate, a diplomatic courier, arrived in the Vilos system. When the Vilos fleet opened fire, the human ship didn't fight back. It simply activated a localized time dilation field. The Vilos fleet found themselves frozen in a bubble of slow time, where a second outside was a year inside. By the time the humans turned it off an hour later, the Vilos crews had aged 30 years and were begging to negotiate. The message was clear. Resistance is a waste of time, literally. Vaylor found himself aboard the Terra Eterna, a guest and a hostage of circumstance. He walked the halls of the human ship, overwhelmed by the scale. The interior was not cramped like council ships. It was vast, with parks, lakes, and cities inside the hull. The sky above was a simulation of Earth's blue atmosphere. He saw humans, not soldiers, but families, artists, engineers. They walked with a calm confidence that unsettled him. They didn't look like a species at war. They looked like a species that had already won. He was escorted to the bridge, a platform suspended in the center of a holographic sphere that displayed the entire galaxy in real time. Solon was there, speaking with a group of officers who wore no rank insignia, only different colored sashes. "Counselor," Solon greeted him, not looking up from a stream of data. "The mobilization of the core systems is at 40%, too slow. The harvesters will cross the galactic threshold in 6 months. My people are terrified," Vaylor said. "They see your ships, your technology, they think you are the new tyrants." "Fear is a useful motivator," Solon said, finally turning to him. "But we need trust. That is why I brought you here. I want to show you the engine." "The engine?" Vaylor asked. "The drive core of this ship?" "No," Solon smiled. "The engine of the ascendancy, the reason we survived the isolation." Solon tapped a console and the floor dissolved, or seemed to. Vaylor gasped, clutching the railing. Beneath them was a view of Earth, but it was not the Earth of the archives. It was encased in a Dyson swarm, a lattice of rings and stations that harvested 100% of the sun's output. But there was something else. A beam of pure, blinding white light shot from the North Pole of Earth, piercing the sun and continuing out into the void. "We didn't just sit on our planet," Solon explained. "We realized that our location in the galaxy was unique, a nexus of hyperspatial currents. We built the Spire of Gaia. It anchors reality. It stabilizes the quantum foam." "I do not understand the physics," Vaylor admitted. "It means," Solon said, leaning in, "that we can change the rules. If the harvesters want to eat the energy of the universe, we will change the flavor. We will make the galaxy indigestible." The audacity of the plan was staggering. The humans intended to alter the fundamental frequency of the galaxy's energy to starve the invaders. "It requires total synchronization," Solon said. "Every stargate, every reactor, every shield generator in the Council must be tuned to our frequency. That is why we need you. We need the keys to the network." Vaylor looked at the Earth, glowing with power. He realized then that the quarantine hadn't been a prison. It had been a cocoon. The Council had locked a caterpillar in a box and was now terrified of the butterfly. I will authorize the synchronism." "Tion," Vaylor said, "but you must promise me one thing." "Name it," Solon said. "When this is over, when the harvesters are gone, you will not leave us. You will not go back into the dark." Solon looked at him, and for the first time his eyes showed a hint of sadness. "We can never go back, Vaylor. The dark is already here." The months that followed were a blur of frenetic activity. Under human direction, the galaxy was transformed. The Council fleets were refitted with human shield modulators. The hyperlanes were reinforced. The Crixus warlord, initially hostile, found a strange kinship with the human marines. He respected their discipline, their lack of fear. He watched a human squad drop into a hive of scourge remnants, leftovers that the harvesters pushed ahead, and clear it with surgical precision using gravity hammers and kinetic barriers. He approached the squad leader, a woman named Commander Riley. "You fight like demons," the warlord grunted, "but you have no trophies, no skulls on your armor." Riley looked at him, wiping black ichor from her visor. "We don't fight for glory, big guy. We fight so we can go home and grow tomatoes." The warlord didn't understand the reference, but he understood the sentiment. A warrior who fights for peace is the most dangerous of all, for they have a finish line. The Sylph, meanwhile, were fascinated by human philosophy. They spoke with the AIs that ran the human ships. They discovered that humans had not enslaved their AI, they had partnered with them. They treated them as citizens. The Sylph representative, Lyra, asked Solon about this. "You created life greater than yourselves, yet you do not fear it." "We fear stagnation," Solon replied. "Our children should always be better than us. Whether they are born of flesh or code is irrelevant." This concept shattered the Sylph's worldview, which was built on the preservation of the ancient forms. The humans were teaching the galaxy that tradition was just peer pressure from the dead. Then the harvesters arrived. They did not emerge from hyperspace. They emerged from the darkness between the stars. They were not ships. They were entities the size of planetary systems, vast shifting clouds of darkness that blotted out the background radiation of the universe. They were colder than absolute zero. As they approached the outer rim, stars simply went out. They didn't explode. They vanished. The harvesters were drinking them. The sensors of the Galactic Council screamed and died. Fear, absolute and paralyzing, gripped the galaxy. Even the humans went quiet. On the bridge of the Terra Eterna, the mood was grim. "Target lock impossible," the tactical officer reported. "They are absorbing all active scans." "Switch to passive," Solon ordered. "Visual confirmation." The main screen showed the abyss. It was moving, a wall of nothingness. "They are ignoring the decoy fleets," the officer said. "They are heading straight for the core, straight for the highest concentration of energy." "They are hungry," Solon said. "Time to feed them." He opened a channel to the entire galaxy. "This is Ambassador Solon, Initiate Protocol Prometheus, Network Synchronization in 321 Mark." Across the galaxy, millions of reactors, from the massive Dyson spheres of the humans to the small fission plants of the outer colonies, pulsed in unison. They shifted their output frequency. They began to emit a radiation that was harmless to matter but chaotic to the energy feeders. It was like turning the galaxy into a sonic weapon. The effect was visible. The wall of darkness shuddered. The harvesters slowed. They were tasting the energy, and it was bitter. It was poison. "Hold the frequency," Solon shouted. "Push the output to 120%. "Reactors are redlining," Valor cried from his station. "The Crixus ships are starting to buckle." "Let them buckle," the Crixus warlord roared over the comms. "Better to burn out than fade away. Pour it on," the galaxy screamed with light. For a moment, the night sky on 1,000 worlds turned into day. The harvesters recoiled. The darkness writhed. And then the humans played their ace. "Deploying the singularities," Solon whispered. From the Terra Eterna and a dozen other massive human dreadnoughts, small projectiles were fired. They traveled at near-light speed into the heart of the harvester clouds. "Detonate." The projectiles were not bombs. They were portable event horizons. They collapsed, creating momentary black holes that lived for only a microsecond, but in that microsecond they exerted infinite gravity. The harvesters, beings of loose energy and shadow, were torn apart. It was like throwing stones into a mist, but the stones were heavy enough to drag the mist down. The darkness swirled, screamed, a sound heard not with ears but with the soul, and began to dissipate. The entities were losing cohesion. They were bleeding into the void. The largest of them, a cloud the size of a solar system, lashed out. A T. Endril of shadow struck the Terra Eterna. The shields flared, blinding white, then failed. The ship groaned, metal buckling. Sparks showered the bridge. "Structural integrity compromised," the AI shouted. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 40. Solon was thrown across the bridge. He scrambled up, blood running down his face. "Hold the line," he screamed. "Don't let them anchor." The human ship was being dragged into the shadow. Valor watched in horror. The humans were sacrificing themselves. They were the bait. "Counselor," Solon yelled at him. "The Spire of Gaia, you have the link. Activate the final surge. Overload the network." "It will destroy the hyperlanes," Valor shouted back. "It will strand us all." "Do it. Or there won't be anyone left to be stranded." Valor looked at the human. He saw the resolution in his eyes. The humans were willing to break the galaxy to save it. Valor slammed his hand on the console. "Command authorized, surge." The energy of 10,000 stars was channeled through the human network. It surged through the Terra Eterna, turning the ship into a conduit of pure power. The beam from Earth, light years away, pulsed. The energy hit the harvester that had grabbed the ship. The shadow didn't just break, it evaporated. The backlash of energy tore through the harvester fleet, a chain reaction of light that scoured the outer rim clean. The darkness vanished. The stars returned. And then silence. The Terra Eterna drifted, scarred, burning, but whole. The network was fried. The hyperlanes were collapsed. The galaxy was dark save for the starlight, but it was alive. Act 3 opened in the quiet aftermath. It took months for communications to be restored. The hyperlanes would take decades to rebuild, but the fear was gone. In the grand chamber of the High Synod, the atmosphere had changed. The obsidian slate was gone, replaced by a simple wooden table, a gift from Earth. Valor sat there, no longer the High Counselor, but simply a representative. Solon sat opposite him, his arm in a sling. The Crixus, the Sylph, the others, they were there too. The hierarchy of the past was dust. The humans hadn't conquered them, they had equalized them. They were all survivors now. "The repairs are proceeding," Valor said. "The human engineers are teaching our crews how to rebuild the lattice. It is humbling." "We are learning from you as well," Solon said quietly. Your art, your history. We spent so long looking at the void, we forgot what it meant to look at a painting. The Crixus warlord grunted. My warriors are bored. They are helping with agriculture on the outer colonies. A Crixus farming. It is undignified, but the food is good. A ripple of amusement went through the room. It was the first genuine laughter the council had heard in centuries. But there was a heaviness in Solon's demeanor that Valor couldn't ignore. The harvesters, Valor said, they are gone. The ones we saw are gone, Solon admitted, but they were just the grazers, the herd. The room went still. There is always a bigger fish, isn't there? Solon stood up and walked to the viewport. The station had been moved. It now orbited Earth, the new heart of the Alliance. Below them, the blue marble shone, the scars of the Dyson swarm still visible but opening up, letting the sun breathe again. We found something in the wreckage of the lead harvester, Solon said. A signal, not from them, directed at them. A command signal? The sylph asked. No, Solon said. A warning, a beacon. He turned to face them. The harvesters were running too. They weren't invading us for food alone. They were fleeing something else, something that is expanding from the galactic core. He pressed a button and the hologram displayed the center of the galaxy, the supermassive black hole. It was pulsing. We thought the quarantine was about keeping us in, Solon mused. Then we thought it was about keeping the scourge out. But the truth is, the entire galaxy is a quarantine zone. The elders, the ones who built the relays, who seeded life, they weren't protecting the galaxy from us. They were hiding us. Hiding us from what? Valor whispered, the old fear returning, but different this time, sharper. From the architects, Solon said. The beings who built the universe and decided it was flawed. They are coming to format the drive, to start over. He looked at the diverse group of aliens, the warrior, the bureaucrat, the ethereal spirit. The harvesters were trying to consume enough energy to escape to another dimension. They failed. So we are trapped, the Crixus asked. Trapped with the architects. Solon smiled, and it was the smile of the wolf that had realized it was no longer the prey. Trapped? No, you see, the architects operate on logic. They operate on perfect order. They delete chaos. They delete anomaly. He gestured to the humans, to the aliens, to the messy, broken, beautiful alliance they had forged. We are the ultimate anomaly. Why, we are the virus in their perfect system. They are coming to delete us. And what do we do? Valor asked, standing up. He didn't feel weak anymore. He felt the steel of the human influence in his spine. Solon looked at the stars. We do what humans have always done. We refuse to be deleted. We adapt. We dig in. We break the rules. He looked back at his new allies. The quarantine is over. The training simulation is complete. The real war is just beginning, and this time we have the admin codes. The camera pulled back through the viewport, away from the station, away from Earth. It drifted past the rebuilding fleets of the Crixus, the shimmering cities of the Sylph, the massive brooding hulks of the human dreadnoughts. It moved faster out of the solar system, out of the local cluster, until the galaxy was just a spiral of light in the dark. And there, at the edges, the darkness was shifting, not with monsters, but with possibility. The signal from the core pulsed, a rhythmic beat. It sounded like a countdown, but from the Earth, from the heart of the spiral, a new signal was rising to meet it. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a plea, it was a laugh. A defiant, roaring laugh that said, "We are here. Come and get us." The screen faded to black, leaving only the afterimage of the blue star, and the feeling that, for the first time in eons, the galaxy was not afraid of the dark. It was arming itself against it. Humanity had been the prisoner. Now they were the warden, and the galaxy was finally safe.